One important thing that I want to point out is pretty much our perception of our time, right? A lot of the times we think we're getting work done when we really aren't. Okay, so you might sit down at your desk and say, I was at my desk studying from 4 to 7, 3 hours of work. But when you're really, really honest with yourself, how much time did you really spend studying? Was it about 20 minutes out of the hour? Were you really surfing the web doing other stuff? Were you talking with friends? Were you on Facebook or on some other sort of social media, um, chatting with people, etc., reading silly stuff that's unnecessary? So here's a question. Are you the only one to be, off track like that? No. Most kids struggle with focus. But the thing is, we never sit down and actually think about what it is that our brain is doing and why we're not focused. Okay? Why aren't we focused?
Too involved with our phones or computers.
Oh, yeah, we're distracted, number one, thinking of other things. But what helps us get rid of distraction? So let me give you an example. I might be trying to do my homework and trying to do some math homework and problems, but what constantly happens? You're trying to add something together or multiply something, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I definitely need to make sure I cut my nails tonight. Or, you know what? I forgot to do that. I'm going to make sure I do that when I get home. Or when I get to school, I got to make sure I tell Bob this. Right? Do you see how your mind starts to go through all these other silly things? Okay? Why and what can we do to combat it?
Well, we don't want to do work, and that's
Okay.
why you think of other things.
Okay.
You try to get out of it by coming up with something that you think you need to do.
But the thing is, some of these things you actually do need to do, right? Like take out the trash or make sure that, something's cleaned up for tomorrow, or make sure you put that binder in your backpack or a book in your backpack for the next day. So what do you usually do? Do you usually get distracted and go do those things?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's common among academics to joke about this is whenever I have a deadline, my house becomes the cleanest it's ever been, right? Because the moment I have something to do, I turn my attention to other things that aren't necessary to be done in a way to procrastinate. Okay, but it also brings in another conversation about why we procrastinate. But here's something. I like to grab these note cards, so if you want to grab some before you leave, go ahead. I just like to keep one next to me, and so if I have something that needs to be done, I write it down and I forget about it. Right? Because now the reason it's going through your mind is because your mind's going through a process of, oh, what still has to be done. Once it's put down and it's dealt with, you don't need to think about it. Does that help? Right? And so a lot of us end up thinking, oh, it's so urgent, I gotta go do it right now. We pick ourselves up, we go do it, and all of a sudden we've wasted our time. Right? There are things of urgency and priority. Right? Is if it's like putting a book into your backpack, you could just make sure you put a star next to it, and before you go to bed, make sure everything gets dealt with, right? So it's a matter of being efficient, but a matter of gaming the system, making sure that you understand your brain is going to think of other things. Don't fight it, but give it some sort of outlet. Because the way I look at it is, if it's like a line of code that's constantly floating in your mind, and it comes back up again. If it comes back up 5 times, that's 5 times you could have spent thinking about bio stuff instead. And so once it comes up and you know that's something that needs to be done, put it down. You would give it a ranking of priority and urgency as well, and move on from there. Okay? So go ahead. And if you want to grab some note cards, you can go do that. But then the next step is carving out our time to take care of a couple of those things. Because I know as you're sitting there, you're not going to spend 3 hours straight studying. Okay? So there's something, you can write these words down. Pomodoro time. Pomodoro. You can go and find an app on the App Store, etc. Some of them are pretty cool where they actually turn your phone on to like airplane mode for the time. But what it is it's a timer that takes 30 minutes, and what it usually does is gives you 24, 25 minutes as a timer, and then the last 5 separate. What you're trying to do is you have a focus in one task for 25 minutes. Okay? Once that task is done, you do whatever you need to for the next 5. All right? But what it does is it gives you a short break so that you can regenerate, you can refocus yourself, do what you need to in those 5 minutes. But once that timer's up, every 30 minutes, instead of you only getting 10 to 15 minutes of work done, you're getting 25 solid minutes of work done. And once that's done, you get the 5 minutes to take care of what's ever on your list or a couple of things really quick. And once that timer's back up, you go back straight to your work. In doing so, you're a little bit more balanced in your work. All right?